Good afternoon. Great to have everybody here. And it's great and a pleasure to introduce Ryan London, the president of the Lake Forest Open Lands Association. Ryan is the 5th president in the 56-year history of the nonprofit. And he is the only president who spent his entire career with Open Lands. And recently, Ryan has been involved with a very big project. In fact, the biggest in Open Lands history, the restoration project. Biggest restoration project in history is the Gene and John Green Nature Preserve at McCormick Ravine. And this has involved building bridges, forging trails. I think they planted about 100,000 flowers. It's a beautiful spot. If you haven't been there, it's right on the shores of Lake Michigan. And as I look around the room, I know many of us have a deep love and appreciation of Open Lands. And so we're all excited to hear what Ryan has to tell us today. Ryan, take it away.
Thank you, Dan. So I'm really excited to be here as president of Lake Forest Open Lands. And on behalf of our board of governors, our talented staff, and our dedicated volunteers, I'm excited to give you an update on the organization. Off to a swimming start. There we go. Okay, so it's great to see so many familiar faces, but I'd like to take this opportunity to just share a little bit about who I am and why I've dedicated my entire career to this organization. My wife Jill and I are both locally raised, both alum from Lake Forest High School, where we have 2 sons, a junior and a senior. And in addition to my work at Lake Forest Open Lands, I also serve on the board of directors of the Prairie State Conservation Coalition, which is the statewide association of land trusts. And then I chair the 99-year-old Camping and Education Foundation. We operate for the Wilderness in Cincinnati and the 2 summer camps up on Rainy Lake, Camp Kuchichang and Camp Ogeechee-Dockway for the girls. Just yesterday, we opened up our application for the 26th class of participants in our summer internship program. Now having trained over 160 current and future conservation leaders, pound for pound, this program delivers one of the best opportunities in our nation for college students to apply their studies within a community that's steeped in conservation values. And this remarkable program is how my story at Lake Forest Open Lands began. Sponsored by the Lake Forest Garden Club, and I was just telling Lauren, I regret not using the staff picture where she was in it, but we'll have to do. I was one of 3 sponsored by the Lake Forest Garden Club in summer of 1999, and it's an experience that forever changed my life. My eyes were opened to the power of a community that champions nature, whether it was the grace that Margie Hart showed me when I accidentally showed up at her art studio on my first day and she took me to the office, or my second day when Jamie Field gave me my first tour. I've carried and the passion of this community's commitment to conservation in my heart forever. And I've loved working with our many partners throughout Lake Forest as we continue to sow the seeds just in our special wild places. At Lake Forest Open Lands, we believe that nature needs us just as much as we need nature. One of my goals today is to tell you how easy it is and how good it feels to experience the mindset that we call Think Outside. So as an independently funded conservation and education organization, we are devoted to preserving and stewarding our incredible local landscapes and ensuring that all are welcome and able to fully experience nature. For 56 years, as David mentioned, it's been our privilege to engage and expand our community's commitment to nature, working with some of the rarest ecosystems found in the entire upper Midwest. So I'm going to hop off camera, but everybody's familiar with the Skokie River. We have our Derwent Martin Nature Preserve here, Middleport to the north, Melody and our West Skokie, soon to be 770 unnamed, which we just connected with the old Zerkin parcel. Now with our portion and the city lease portion and the forest reserve, that's a 7.5 mile protected corridor. Deer Path Farm is our 6th preserve. Everett Farm down here in the southwest corner, and Old Nursery is 7th. McCormick Ravine with the Gene and John Green Nature Reserve would be 8, and then our 9th preserve, yet to have any formalized plans. Our newest acquisition, the largest land donation in our history, is West Fork Savannah, just on the west side of the tollway, next to Florsheim Woods, north of Half Day Road, behind the old Hewitt complex, an incredible matrix of savanna and wetlands. It's a former site of eastern white fringed orchid, an endangered species, really exciting property. So we're thrilled to have preserved over 900 acres of savanna, prairie, wetlands, ravines, and streams. And over those last 6 decades, us to grow from an all-volunteer organization to a full-time staff of 13, which just about doubles during the summer with our education help and our interns. And we were the first accredited land trust to receive national accreditation in the state of Illinois, something that we've been reaccredited twice since. We have to do it one more time, and then we get to go on the long cycle and not have to do it every 5 years. So answering the call to action on conservation issues with innovative solutions has been core to our organizational values since the beginning. Our start, as many of you know, as a group of concerned neighbors witnessing the loss of prairie and the decline of water quality of our local streams. But as we worked to solve those problems and began to develop models for conservation and then test those programs, we've shared those lessons learned and through partnerships exported our think outside mindset beyond our community, beyond the region, and beyond. So here's our CCL, our Center for Conservation Leadership students out doing research in the Tetons. I talked about all these, but our 4 core beliefs, I like to talk about these on our staff calls, but conservation, community, collaboration, competency. And we firmly believe that wearing your open lands hat is a badge of honor for being something that was started well before the very first Earth Day, 5 years before the Clean Water Act, 1967. And that's not unique for Illinois. We have a lot of conservation pioneering flags in the sand, so to speak, to be proud of. In 1963, George Fell, who I did not have the privilege of knowing, but my friend Rector Pearson appropriately named his book, his biography, A Force of Nature. He truly was. He started the Illinois Nature Preserve Commission in 1963, the first of its kind in our nation. He also started something called the Nature Conservancy. We've all heard it. And an incredible legacy. So nature preserves, Illinois dedication, are very special. And we actually have 3 of these. In Northeast Illinois, we have the densest population of rare and unique species in the whole state. And in order to have a nature preserve dedicated as an INPC or Illinois Nature Preserve Commission site, you have to go through a lengthy, several years long process, and it's only available per the recommendation of the commission. It goes all the way up to the governor. It's only available to the most critical habitats. So how I like to put it, we're truly blessed to have this natural fabric that is the market to work within. This incredible density of high quality, special places around here, but it's the proof. So how do we save land? There's a lot of different options. We have done conservation development, and I'll talk about that a little bit in a second. We also influence and advise on zoning. We helped create the open space dedications throughout Lake Forest. We started advising native landscaping with private landowners, and we're starting to see that migrate towards institutions. It's very common. You look at all the landscaping at Lake Forest Hospital now, it's fantastic. It's a great habitat. And educating and engaging the public as well. And conservation easements. And I'll talk about conservation easements in a second, but that's one of our fantastic land conservation tools. Always like to reiterate, we receive no local tax dollars. We're solely funded on contributions. And we're incredibly well supported by this fantastic community. So our efforts here with the 900 acres have contributed nationally to 62 million acres preserved by land trusts. So just for comparison, all the national parks combined, that's 85 million. So we're nearly there, and our goal is to double that, to get up to 120. But our challenge is that in the US, we lose 1.5 million acres of natural areas every year. So that's a football field every 20 seconds. That's 150 acres as of natural land, plus 40 acres of working land, so farms, forest production sites every hour. 150 acres plus another 40 acres every hour. And once that land is gone, we can't get it back. When we lose our natural and working lands, we lose much more than we think. With every acre of land lost, we weaken our connection with nature. We wipe out climate stabilizing working lands and forests. We isolate wildlife habitats. We change the course for the next generation's relationship with nature. Less land means less plants, less insects, less animals, less food for us. Locally, this means hotter summers, wetter climates, fewer fireflies, and more leaf blowers. This picture is at Deer Path Farm. This is one of my favorite projects. This was a 200-acre site, one of our conservation developments. I stepped in my role in the management. I didn't have a whole lot of planning with this, so I can't take credit, but it's just incredible. 200 acres would have been developed to meet the needs of the family. We always like to work with the financial needs of our landowners and respect their values and help them realize them. It's 5-acre density, 5-acre zoning out at Meadowwood. This is across the street from Granger. So you would have had 40 houses, all carved up into 5-acre boxes. We were able to challenge that, push the zoning, cluster the houses, and save 152 acres of contiguous land, 140-acre forest that was never even logged, a remnant site. Actually, the Botanic Garden will come up there and collect seed, and you can see it's just absolutely beautiful. So we're working to help our community balance this with this. That's my backyard. I'm the crazy guy that planted a prairie under my orchard. So those are my fruit trees. So conservation easements, just very, very high level. Very important tool to us. I'm not going to go into legislation and tax fraud. Don't worry, Charlie, you talked about that last week. We've been able to preserve over 300 acres with this incredible instrument, over 80 different easements. Just last fall, received another easement from the Lillard family to push us towards that 1,000-acre goal. Incredible. These are a win-win for nature, for landowners, and for our entire community, but they're kind of the unsung heroes. We all see them every day throughout our lives, but we don't necessarily know that it's an open lands project or that we are involved. So I want to point out a couple of them that you might see driving around. We have the Kerrigan House easement on Sheridan Road. There's a big easement on Walden Ravine here. Laurel, every time you go down to open lands on Laurel and you look south, that's a 5-acre conservation easement, as well as Waukegan. We truly see our community as one big connected matrix of habitats. The plants, the birds, the insects, and the animals, they don't recognize the property lines. And even though our preserves function as a 900-acre strategic floodwater sponge at times, especially when we receive rain events like last July, the community-wide function is and what we ask of nature is especially palpable. We are increasingly finding that nature already has the valuable answers. And I believe that when we think outside, we can unlock those answers together while we build capacity and resiliency for the future. So a national statistic, 86% of land in the United States is privately owned. And 80% of the population of the United States is in a major metropolitan area. So that's like us. We're right, we check both of those boxes. And if we're going to work together with the nature on challenges that we face with climate change, water quality, habitat loss, pollinators that we need for food, then conservation community models like we've established here in Lake Forest are indeed the solution. I like this statistic too. So this always surprises me. 40% of the United States agricultural land is projected to change hands in the next 15 years. So we have to be talking to the right people. Just before the pandemic, understandably dominated the news for the last 3 years, it was hard to ignore this one that came out in mid-2019. So we use biodiversity as a word to encompass all living plant and animal species. And it's disappearing at a rate faster than any time in recorded history. Just breeding birds alone over the last 50 years have decreased by 3 billion, that's 29%. So they're predicting, if we're on this track, that 1/3, so 1 million species, face extinction within a few decades, unless we really work hard to do this preservation. Now you've heard maybe in the news or read about America the Beautiful. That's what this is about, the 30 by 30 challenge. So in Illinois, all of Illinois, that number is wrong, I'm going to say. It's actually closer to 37 million acres. I don't think that includes water. So all of Illinois land and water is about 37 million acres. We've been able to preserve through parks and our work as Land Trust about 1.5 million. So a little over 4%. Land trusts have done 250,000 acres. We've got 9 million more to go to get to 30. That's a chunk of land the size of New Jersey and Illinois if we're going to do that. And clearly, ag lands are a big part of that equation. We're working on that at the state level. So in order to hold off that 1 million species decline, the Global Deal for Nature framework is setting the conservation goal of 30%. That's what I just mentioned. And this challenge has been accepted at the federal level. It was passed by Illinois General Assembly last year. But we know land conservation that takes place locally outside of the domes of government through community-based nonprofit organizations like ours. This is what provides the opportunity for citizens of all backgrounds to save the places they need and love through open conversations, like hopefully we'll have today, that empower landowners to preserve their personal values, their traditions, and their vision with charitable collaboration. I've seen many talks and rallying speeches that say land is the answer. Although Leopold defined land health as its capacity for self-renewal, I think conserving these places through citizen-led community efforts like we do here is where we all find common ground. And so the impact of our work is truly limitless. Okay, take a pause from the stats. Fun fact, and don't raise your hand if you've seen this before. Which of these species has not been seen in Lake Forest? Guessing? Trick you. None. They're all found during my career here at Lake Forest Openlands. Pretty incredible. And I love the fact that, I mean, growing up, we never saw bald eagles. We see them all the time now on all of our sites, along the lake, along the river corridors. If you go out at night tonight, you will hear the great horns calling. They should be on their eggs within the next couple of days. Short-eared owl on the right there, very cute. Screech owl. The beautiful wood ducks, eastern bluebird, rose-breasted grosbeak, black-billed cuckoo, red-shouldered hawk up there, and a bittern on the bottom. Usually hear those where you see them. And then we're gonna see, even though Bucks County Phil gave us bad news yesterday, we're gonna start seeing these woodcocks pretty soon. Usually I don't see them until they are almost under my foot. And bankswall, unique species that loves some of the little microhabitats we have along the creeks and along the shoreline. So it's easy to feel our connection with our furry and feathered friends and get excited. But how do we connect with something harder to see, even when you have a nice pair of binoculars? I believe it's storytelling. Storytelling is how we leverage our ability to connect. Jack Trout, marketing thought leader, came up with the concept of positioning in the late 60s, which is the idea that we as consumers tend to simplify and manage the overwhelming amount of information. Imagine if we had modeled this now. It's delivered to us and we direct it. We have to find those windows through. I never felt more of a closer window and the need for it than my freshman year of college as an environmental studies student. Just imagine 2 semesters of the darkness of Vermont, hearing the doomsday statistics that I've been rambling off. It was pretty tough. And for me, the window that saved me was that internship here, to work with a community, to get my hands dirty and roll up my sleeves and really see how we can make a difference. For many, it was the scale of this photo, Earthrise from Apollo 8. So our mission is to preserve and create opportunities for our community to experience those same windows through the noise of life today, whether it's a walk or a wheelchair spin through Lake Forest Openlands, or a class or an event. It's an opportunity to experience past, present, and future all at once. So I'm going to tell a short story about the lake. Aldo Leopold, living expert, Kurt Miney, wrote a great, he's based up in Wisconsin. He's spoken here at the Garden in Lake Forest. I love his stuff. He spent a short period of his time in the 60s growing up here and wrote a great essay called Washed Up on the Shores of Lake Michigan. He starts this essay as follows. For the Chicago region, the lake is the source of the rising sun. Then its daytime's spread out sheen of blue or slate or green. And then finally, its nighttime's void, just out there, beyond the reach of urban lights. It is dark matter, off the grid, the great pool of mystery amid our familiar. I actually experienced this morning. I was sitting down at Northwestern, waiting for my son to finish an appointment, and I watched the sun come up. It was incredible. So how do we connect with something that's impossibly large, something so big it holds 84% of our country's fresh water, 20% of all fresh water on Earth? Green Bay, it's the largest freshwater estuary system on the entire planet. It's hard to imagine that this giant entity that's difficult to engage with is something that could collapse or be frail enough to fail. But it could, and certain parts of it did. And that's because ecosystems are constantly changing. And we, as humans, are agents in that change, sometimes for the good, like all the work we do, sometimes not so good. The Great Lakes now host some 180 invasive algae, plants, invertebrates, and fish. And one of the biggest things that we did to be that agent of change was we actually changed the watershed. So I love this map. I could talk about this map the rest of the day. You can download it from University of Illinois. It's all the watersheds in the state. Whenever I have students come out and we do ecology walk, I ask them, do you know which watershed you live in? And usually they don't. I tell them where to go find it. It's really important to know. It's how we connect. And so the Lake Michigan watershed today is just that little pink sliver. But it used to include all this down here. So by 1922, what was historically 673 square miles was altered. All of the Cal-Sag Canal, the Chicago River that goes into the Des Plaines that used to go into Lake Michigan. It was diverted appropriately to handle flooding and sanitation and cargo traffic. But what was left is just 88 square miles, 12% of the original watershed. And of this, 50 square miles are here in Lake County. And ravines, they cover about 1.6. So 1.6 square miles of the entire Lake Michigan watershed is where all the water goes through. It's really important that we manage them correctly. In recent years, another species has arrived here with the Lake Michigan ecosystem once every 8 months. Some, like the zebra mussels, we know mainly because they cause hundreds of millions of economic damage. One way to kind of think of this is like a kaleidoscope of ecology, with stuff changing, coming in, different processes changing, but it seems to be speeding up. So I'm going to tell the story about the fish. These are those things that we don't see. The continuous overfishing of many species and unchecked industrial and agricultural pollution contributed to the disruption of the native fish communities in the Great Lakes. The most profound ecological effects were on 3 species that are pelagic. Pelagic fish are open water fish: the blackfin cisco, the long-jawed cisco, and the deep water cisco. These guys swam right into extinction by the early 60s. The lake trout, the catch of lake trout in Lake Michigan in 1946 was 5.5 million pounds. Just 7 years later, it was less than 402 pounds. So with the lake trout predators gone, with the cisco failing because of our poor management, it was an open field, and the alewives came in through shipping and ballast water. They came in the 40s, and then it was just an open field for the next 20 years until that big die-off the same year we were founded in 1967, when, this is before my time, but that's why I connected with this story, because I grew up in Lake Bluff. I remember walking to the beach every afternoon with day camp, and as soon as you would pass the library, you'd start to smell the alewives, which we've not had to deal with too much lately. But there was tens of billions. They were bulldozing them. They were dropping deodorant from helicopters. I guess they are somewhat coming back on the eastern shore of Lake Michigan, but the gobies and the zebra mussels have pretty much taken care of them here. This picture stood out to me too. This is not the Lake Michigan I grew up with. This looks like the Caribbean. And that's because of the zebra mussels and the gobies. So I just like to point out how something so robust and so big and so intangible can actually have issues like this. So this was my personal story, my personal conviction. So, of course, like I was saying, stewarding these ravines is really important for the habitat, but all of our water, where we get our drinking water, goes through them. So stewarding them in that regard is really important too. And as I mentioned before, in the 50 years since the Clean Water Act was passed, 83% of freshwater species have declined. So knowing how sensitive this massive ecosystem is, we're better informed to make judgments, to pass political approvals, to support things like Waukesha draining from Lake Michigan. And we're able to read these weekly editorials almost with better clarity. And they're not always out in California. You'll see Joliet's running out of groundwater. It's 50 miles away. I always like to bring this up too. Has anybody heard of Line 5? Line 5 pipeline up in the Straits of Mackinac? This pipeline pumps 22 million gallons of oil underneath Lake Michigan every day. And in its lifetime, there's been 33 separate incidents where it's leaked a combined total of 1 million gallons of oil into Lake Michigan. It was struck by an anchor in 2018 during a storm on a barge that blew off mooring. These are the kinds of things we got to pay attention to. So this story of Lake Michigan helped do that positioning with my personal local relationship with our environment, to be a more informed and engaged citizen. These are the kinds of things that we like to do and put into our work plans with our own stakeholders. So that great pool of mystery that Kurt talked about earlier is starting to look a little bit more familiar. We're trying to be better stewards and caring for our coast as a living community to which we belong, instead of just something that is separate from us. And that's what we call ecological literacy. That's just a fancier way of saying think outside. And at Lake Forest Open Lands, we're proud to be our community's voice. We're at 1 acre at a time, 1 story at a time. And with the Gene and John Green Nature Preserve at McCormick Ravine, our approach is to have people take that home. This is the very first site where we have interpretive sign panels. We have these professionally designed. They were funded by a grant. All of the great stories and the lessons that we've learned there, people are going to be able to read. They'll be able to get them on their smartphone. They'll be able to take them home. And that follows the logic model of knowledge generates interest, interest generates compassion, and compassion generates change. So this is a 3-hour lecture that I'm not going to have time to get into today, but I'm briefly going to talk about some of the work that we did out there. We took out all the old infrastructure with the Army Corps project from the state, 600 cubic yards of cement, 300 cubic yards of clay pipes. We moved 30 million pounds of stone. It was just a massive project, planted, as David said, over 100,000 species, and then reconnected McCormick Ravine to Lake Michigan for the first time in nearly 100 years. Lots of invasive species removal, over 2,000 dead ash, many of which we were able to mill with boardwalk for Eagle Scouts and boardwalks. And those pipes, each of those pipes, 3 feet wide in diameter, but the clay is 4 inches thick. I don't know how the heck they got those things down there before. This was before diesel equipment. And they had to use, those are big giant machines just to get them out of there. So these are a series of photos. This is before, during, all from the same spot. Another during. Remember, 30 million pounds of stone. Each of those cubic blocks is 3 feet. It's a cubic, 9 cubic feet, 3 feet by 3 feet. Massive. And here's how it looked after. So before, after. This is my favorite picture. 2 years after we finished, we had rainbow trout spawning in there. And that was from one of our surveys. So think outside, and the knowledge, interest, compassion, engagement model is a form of sustainable positioning. Remember, those are those windows into us and to see through all these problems. And it's relationship based. I believe that this relationship is the medicine for that which ails much of our culture today. And conservation is an essential way to address the major challenges facing our society. Protecting our lands and waters is a public health issue. When we save nature, we save ourselves. And our success relies on our ability to continue to weave the spectacular landscape of Lake Forest with our everyday lives. So I'll talk a little bit about the preserve and how we approach getting people out there. So recognizing the potential of a completely clear and clean slate, we took our time. We hired experts from around the country. And after all, this idea was on paper for almost 100 years. You can see, proposed park, 1923. We hired Larry Knudsen, who literally wrote the book on universal access. So anyone of any ability can come to McCormick, hop on one of our universal access trails, and wheel all the way down to the end of the plateau. They won't be able to get down the stairs, but they'll be able to experience the ravine. We've actually incorporated something that we call progressive access. So short hikes, we want to think of time as a modality that we want to make equally accessible for everyone. Cognitive ability. Not everybody has the capacity to go for a 2-hour hike. So, but everybody deserves the ability to see a ravine and learn about a ravine. So we have little 15-minute loops that people can do. It was challenging. It took time. It was very hard to permit. So here's the big reveal. Here's one of our universal access trails. We kept a small footprint. If this was like a forest preserve trail, you'd have another 8 feet of swales on either side. We wanted to have follow the model of do no harm. So we use these boulder retaining structures. They call them turnpike. It's actually never really been done in the Midwest. It's more of an East Coast thing. When I was getting bids back there, like, I don't know what this is. Turnpike. Are we building a road? And in some ways we are. The picture. Fantastic boardwalks, wetlands. And so we just reuse the same footprint for the existing trail that was out there. So it's only 3 feet wide. And that's as far as anybody in a wheelchair will be able to go. Is you're at the very end of that finger bluff, and that's the wheelchair turnaround there. We did not want to expand. We have a bridge over one of the ravines. This, to my knowledge, is the most remote suspension bridge ever done in Illinois. We're almost a mile off pavement here. The anchors for that, for the cables, had to go 40 feet in the ground. Picture of this. We have a beautiful set of stairs that get you out to the lake. And so with the opening of the Gene and John Green Nature Preserve at McCormick Lane the first week of March, that's what we're targeting. Stay tuned to our website. There's a couple of things out of our control, like supply chain issues. We have all our utilities in order. If you ask me tonight, I'll probably know a better story. They're out there working today, I know. Every ward in Lake Forest will have a preserve within walking distance of their front door. And as I mentioned before, we had a wonderful donation of a conservation easement from the Lillards this year. We had the West Fork donation. So that's brought our current land preservation over the last 18 months up to 110 acres, which is pretty incredible and closer than ever to our 1,000-acre goal. I mentioned that 7.5 mile corridor that we connect along the Middle Fork. We're on the verge of replicating our work at McCormick on Skokie River, making many of our trails out there universally accessible too. So for the first time, somebody of any ability is going to be able to experience a river walk along the East Skokie. Last year, we made exciting discoveries of the federally endangered crusty patch bumblebee. We also were permitted to reintroduce Eastern Prairie white-fringed orchid, which has been a long time career goal of mine. It's a lengthy permitting process, but we got that. And then we discovered a rare plant. It's not very photogenic, so it's not on the screen. It's just a grass. It's called Discampia flexuosa, wavy-haired grass. First time occurrence in Illinois, first known occurrence south of Door County. Pretty incredible. And that was at the ravine. So in addition to those beautiful 8, soon to be 10 nature preserves that are, as we know, open 365 days a year for all to enjoy, with 16 miles of trails, we have lots of other ways to engage, from toddlers to elders, for those who like to be learning in the classroom, like me, or those who like to be outside, learning in the field, those who like to block out their calendars 6 months in advance, get them out because I'm going to give you some dates in a little bit, or those that like pop-ups and just like to show up or just drop in. We've got something for everyone. So I know, for example, tonight we have family campfire. Bring your long johns. But they're going, and they'll be here in the owls. It'll be great. I know on Tuesday we have Tuesday on the Trail at Melody. Wednesday night next week we have Native Voices, which on second. There's just so much going on. So we've now hosted over 68,000 students across several generations through our programs. It's been our honor to connect nature with the hearts and minds of our community young ones from all of our local schools and beyond. Our headquarters, our conservation campus at the corner of Deer Path and Waukegan, it's where all things open lands are hubbed, so to speak. It's where we have our plant sales, our programs, our spring event, cattails and cocktails. It's just great. So why are native plants important? I'm going to talk about one more statistic. An oak tree can support, a single oak tree, one oak tree can support over 534 species. Most of those are insects. Native plants are absolutely critical for our planet's building blocks. They are the foundation of the food chain. They perform $577 billion worth of pollination ecosystem services across the whole country. Another fun fact, in the US, we appreciate $350 million worth of free janitorial services by dung beetles alone. So I've heard this phrased as the next mass extinction. There's a million insects. We're on the verge of losing quite a few of them. We've already lost 72% of our population of monarchs. And just to do a quick scale here, because it's just mind-boggling. There's as many species of longhorn beetles as there are all fish, just longhorn beetles. There are the same number of ladybug species at 6,000 as all mammals. It's pretty incredible. And they allow us to live on this planet. But the good news is if you build it, they will come. If you do the native plants and you have the right habitats, they will come back. There's our family campfire. Cattails and cocktails, May 20th. Mark your calendar, Saturday, May 20th. Bonfire, Sunday, September 24th. Hope to see all of you out on the field. I already mentioned our hikes. This is our newest program, the all access wheelchair. So I have some handouts and some goodies over there on the table. This was a partnership with a group in Wisconsin. It's an electric, it's totally silent. It can go anywhere. It can be driven by a caretaker. So someone who can't physically operate it, or they have a cognitive issue, they can be driven remotely from behind. And so all those health benefits of nature that I've been talking about are truly accessible to everybody. And this is in a trailer. So if somebody wanted to go out and borrow it and go hunting for the weekend or go hiking out west in State Park, they could take it and go. They don't have to use it on our site. We've been doing boat building the last couple of years, which is a really wonderful STEM-based curriculum. It's a 40-hour project. There's accountability. The kids assign roles for each other. They learn skills. It's a great program. And I mentioned briefly Native Voices. So us and several organizations throughout town, as well as a couple of schools, are presenting a wide variety of events that celebrate the history and culture and contributions of Native Americans in our community. Our wonderful volunteers dedicate over 6,000 hours of volunteer work throughout the year. Our Tuesday crew named themselves. They didn't like work day, and I understand that. That's not great marketing. So Adventures in Restoration, they call themselves the Air Crew. Made their own t-shirts. Every Saturday, first Saturday of the month, we have Eco Cruise, so families can come out. That's actually tomorrow out at Everett Farm. Wonderful way to learn about what our experts know and pass that knowledge on. And we love our corporate and our community partners. This was a work day last August with Country Day School. Every single employee there came out and got to hear me talk and do some work. They planted, they actually restored the old trail. So if you remember the old trail in the park that you would trip all the roots and everything, we graded it over and planted it with native sedges. It was a great work day. So our success is an incredible accomplishment. and now it's one of the most meaningful institutions in our region. We owe our thanks really to you, all the people in this room, for all we've accomplished over the years. And I want to especially acknowledge the vision of our founders. Many of those meetings took place in this very room. The land trust movement was barely on the radar screen when we got going here. Fortunately, there was that small but tenacious group of local residents who saw the need to start land preservation in Lake Forest before it disappeared, and thank goodness they did. This continues with our programming today, and that same logic model with the students. In the end, we will conserve only what we love, we will love only what we understand, and we will only understand what we are taught. So in closing, I had the Marguerite quote up there, but I like her ex-husband's quote as well, Gregory Bateson, who famously said, the major problems of the world are the result of the difference between how nature works and the way people think. And at Lake Forest Open Lands, we believe the solution to bridging that problematic difference and to steward that mindset is to embrace think outside. So I know I quickly scratched the surface on how to discover all the different ways that each of you can connect with us. And I hope that you were able to feel the welcoming culture that I've experienced during my tenure here. Please do stop by our office. It is membership season, so at least stop by for a complimentary membership gift. And I actually brought some freebies here too. Stay for a sunset, great place to watch the sunset. So now as the fifth person to lead this organization, like David said, I look forward to serving our entire community with my amazing team, continuing our local tradition, ensuring future generations will always have access to the same savannas, prairies, ravines, and streams to explore and experience. I hope to see all y'all down the trail, like John Santel used to say. And I'll take any questions. Is there? Yes.
Presentation.
Oh, thanks,
Brian. Thank you for your time and efforts. What's, from your position of starting as an intern and now leading the organization, like, maybe explain to us like one or two of the highlights that you remember either in the very beginning or now, or, and maybe you touched on some of them there, but what has been your, highlight for you?
Wow.
Yeah, there's probably so many, right?
There's, yeah, I mean, I feel like I've grown up there.
You bet your
Hey, thank you for coming, looking out for me there. Yes, that's my wife here. Top height. Under the
smart man.
under the linden tree that's no longer there at Ragdale, right by the garage. I think it comes in waves. We seem to feel like we reach a big hurdle and then we come up with some new big idea how to do something better or reach more people, and we set out and do it. I think when you look back at the large West Side acquisitions that we did in the early 2000s, bringing Melody on board, bringing Middle Fork on board, taking Everett Farm from essentially a buckthorn tunnel to one of the best prairies around, where we actually go out and collect seed and donate it back to the Botanic Garden. That's been incredible. Getting a phone call from a donor saying, I have this incredible vision for this property, the West Fork property, but it's going to be, they want to put 285 houses on it. What can we do? And this was in the middle of COVID. And we developed that relationship. We supported them. We came up with solutions. We brought in experts when we needed to, and we got it done. And now that's actually going to be in Illinois Nature Preserve. Center for Conservation Leadership. And as that is taking on its second win now, that's just been incredible. Yeah. Sure.
Brian, a comment, compliment, not a question, but because you're a humble person, many of us in the room know that. But the work that you did to make McCormick happen, I mean, you did the blocking and tackling and really had the muscle behind what was accomplished down there. And it is one of the true gems of the community, and it's really one of the finest assets of this organization and of the state. So congratulations to you for that.
Thanks, Fred. Yeah, it's incredible to be at this point with that project on the verge of opening it. It's been transferred to the association from our foundation. So we have so many milestones that we've been slowly chugging along with that project over the last 7 years. And that started honestly in 1977 with the coastal management zone and Lake Forest Garden Club. We were awarded the very first. I know this only by, I'm one of the weirdos that will go through the drawer and read all the meeting minute notes, but we got the first grant for the coastal management zone in 1977. And then we just slowly, quietly were able to support it with stewardship and monitoring. And then it was ultimately, again, the Lake Forest Garden Club in 2008, who helped us get ravines on the map regionally and build what I call the community capital for the importance of them, and to have the community trust us to take care of it, and ultimately get the eyes and ears of the Army Corps, because we knew it was going to take a lot of work to get it to where it needed to be. Again, supported with the coastal management zone with an outreach grant in 2010, and then the rest is history.
To that point, can you talk a little bit about what it takes, what the key objectives are when you decide to purchase land? It seems like, you know, you've gone out of Lake Forest with the one west of the tollway. What is it you're hoping to do? And what are the, I guess, what are the concepts you have when, you know, what makes you purchase a piece of land? Do you look at sort of the cost of it down the line, how much it will cost to maintain, or what are the key attributes?
Great question, and it's actually a key component of our accreditation process is that we have a very robust project selection criteria. And so we look at a number of things. We look at conservation values. We actually look at habitat and connectivity. We look at potential funding sources. So for the West Fork project, that was a donation, but we knew that it was next to an Illinois nature reserve. So we could apply for buffer status, which is what we're doing. We're dedicating it as a buffer to an Illinois nature reserve. There's, I forget the annual budget. I want to say 500,000 annually available to Illinois nature reserves from the state for grant funding. This year, we were awarded the second highest one in the whole state. So a lot of our burning, a lot of our invasive species management is funded from that DNR funding pool. We look at proximity to existing open space. So the Middle Fork corridor that we were finally able to connect at 7.5 miles, that was so key. And so price can be a factor, although there's a famous quote in our organizational lexicon that's, you'll never remember the price that you pay, but you'll always remember if you didn't buy it. So down the road, I probably butchered that, but did a little George Bush there. But I'm trying to think what else. You know, if we look at on key habitat assessment plans, key species. So again, also with the West Fork, we knew that was a known. So I didn't have this in my presentation, but Illinois has what's called the INAI, the Illinois Natural Areas Inventory. It was the first of its kind. And so way back almost 50 years ago, they went through and they found all these really incredible places, put them on a list, and have been keeping track of them. And so that site was on the INAI, and it was a white fringed orchid site. So we knew, and the capacity of these things to come back was worth it. And sometimes you start a project one way and you end a different way. You know, sometimes you wind up thinking it's going to be an easement and it winds up being a donation, or vice versa.
Do you do any work with Lake Bluff Open Lands? Is there a partnership there?
We are developing that as we speak. I'm actually taking them and Lake Bluff Park District out to McCormick in 2 weeks. Lake Bluff also was a recipient of a nice NASA grant, Natural Area Stewardship Act grant. And they hired their first full-time employee, volunteer coordinator, Michelle, I can't remember her last name, but she's a go-getter. She's been calling me, asking for advice. They are obviously, you know, where we were at one point, and we want to help them. We want to connect our parcels up into Lake Bluff eventually. And I think that we can only amplify each other's efforts. For sure. John,
This is a easy question for you, but this land that we're sitting on today, and everyone's been on those where the boundaries are. What was here before?
that's a great question. I would say, so there's great resources out there where we could look up maps, and I know how much you like maps. Where you can actually look at what they call the pre-settlement vegetation map.
Yeah, but I'm thinking Indians, what was here? Was it just vacant?
One of the biggest, so you can have debates on this too, and Cliff Miller and I have gone dozens of hours deep on these. I would say one thing to keep in mind that's really interesting to think about is our creeks weren't creeks. Remember, those were ditched by the CCC twice, first in 1912, and then, well, that was pre-CCC, and then again in the 30s. So that's one big landscape change. They would have just been, you know, the word Skokie was Algonquin for a wet area, and it was actually a mile wide, half a mile off center in either direction. It was just kind of a swamp. You know, we were the wetland capital of the world. The prairie, somebody said prairie before, a lot of prairie. You know, fire was kind of, so, you know, why plants grow, where they grow, are based on two gradients, soil moisture and sunlight. And then disturbance comes into play too. So the prairie would have been where there was more fire. Towards the east, when it was cooler, our ravines and our woodlands didn't burn so much. They were denser with more trees. As you go out to the savannas, they could tolerate complex. It was a beautiful matrix of wetlands, swamps, savannas, woodlands to the east, and then prairies. The oldest trees in our region are out on the fire break on the leeward side of the Des Plaines. Some sugar maples out there that went back to the early 1600s. We did a survey at McCormick with Marlon Bowles from the Arboretum, and feel free to yank me if I'm going too long here, I apologize. We cored every tree out there. The oldest tree we found at McCormick was 1755. So that means they're all second growth. If you go up to Lake Bluff, I think some of the shoreline and bluff edge trees are a little bit older. They weren't quite as logged. And I think that was because of infrastructure. They had really good infrastructure at Port Sheridan to take all the logs and get them on piers and get them on boats.
Are there any more questions for Ryan? Thank you so much. You did a great job. Thank you for coming, everybody. Ryan, we also have a gift for you.
Oh my goodness. The freezing nights. Thank you.
You're welcome.
The wine you us to drink out of.
My goodness.
Savannah.
Awesome. You guys are great.
You'll have to come there.
Okay, Alderman, before that. I've been trying to talk to some of our road land and townhouse.
Yeah.
I'm not making much of this. If you don't change them together, sure. Always get it change some of the.
Okay. Yeah.
Your advice on
You know, part of that 900 acres is a big chunk with the city was what's called a master lease along the floodplain going back to the influencing of zoning, you know, that's a plan that we pretty much got a development potential. The city still owns it, but we have an agreement to manage it, and now there's some funds from the back.
David, very interesting. Glad I came. Thank you. It was so nice to meet you. I'm intrigued by your STEM program in the summer.
Oh, yeah. The boat building or the? So that is actually, the group that I chair in Cincinnati, we have them come up. So, thanks, John. Oh, thanks. Yeah, so we have a website called Urban Wilderness or Camping and Education. Or check on my card, they can email.
My daughter who lives in,
Yeah, Tuesdays. We come out on Tuesdays.
Yes, yes, I did. I remember them at, I think we became that all, and we spoke and one thing led to another and we were common people.
So now.
Oh, he's good. He's, oh yeah, he's playing hockey. He's been on TV, first year TV right now. The other team was not very happy. But yeah, so we've got some moving into like playoffs right now, so they're really great. And you know, he's actually been, you should know more about it. So he's been playing for last game. He moved from last year, he played almost exclusively cheap. And this year. You know, the beauty of. Yeah. Yeah, I love it. Right now, we're like, he loves it. They're those guys, they literally know how to bridge still. And the green is safely.
Right.
For his birthday, which he gave her once. I love this. Wait, our whenever.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, really.
Oh, well. I said super.
Not till actually,
Yeah.
We knew we can, but I mean. No, I don't know. Weeks after she is, I mean, because it's well known, but those gifts, it's years. But no.
Very, very long time. But it's just good to show, I mean.
So.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just a plain white
A check.
I'm really.
to address.
The check wasn't addressed to you though, because you might not be right now if it was, right?
I was like, this will never.
You'll never see a check like that.
That'll never happen again in my.
Yeah.
Like the ranch, right?
No, I mean, he.
So.
I'm sure they.
So.
Yeah.
I know, I know. Well, whatever. Sorry, I'm so late. Hi, great to see you. Great to see you too. So.
Thanks for coming.
Absolutely, yeah. I know.
I felt like I was preaching to the choir here, but I was ready just in case.
You know.
I said to John,
Confidence is always better than.
to John, I mean, everybody knows the story, many of them lived it, like the Willers,
Yeah.
you know, but to hear it like told in a very condensed version like that, it's powerful, Ryan. I know you live it every day, but like hearing it, it's like, wow, it's incredible.
We're so lucky.
Yeah.
So
It really
lucky.
is.
And people feel it. I mean, that's why we've had so many people come here over the last 3 years. We have and reinforced, we have to tell them. You know, it's like, I'm gonna tell you what I'm gonna tell you, then I'm gonna tell you, then I'm gonna tell you what I told you.
Well, they say it's 7 times, so that just considered the cost.
So we have to do that. And sometimes it's hard for me because, yeah, and we've been living and breathing, and so
Yeah.
it's just like. Doesn't always come.
No, it's just, and it's great. It helps everybody who's been so involved and engaged and invested for so long. Feel even better about what they do and why they do it. You know, it's like.
There's like organizations that think that what.
Yeah.
They're gonna want to go to go, so, I mean, we're good making this,
So good to see you. Thank
We take the box, the dollar,
Above, we have so many buffs from,
Yeah.
from Copeland. Oh, really? Should I, okay, I'll take it. Wait, we'll take it to the lead.
Oh, yeah, John, Don, it's even good, yeah.
They go down.
Where do you guys go?
You definitely want a buck for that.
Good.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll talk, yeah.
Great. You gotta meet Susan. I don't know if you met her yet.
No, I
Great.
really, like, I was for a diet, it's kind of, I don't know anything.
She's gonna be mayor of PSCC.
Okay.
One last comment, Ryan, on that, or on what we were just talking about, and maybe we should talk about that too. He wouldn't want to wait. You know, the one thing I heard on that call was, oh, well, if we can't figure out what we're gonna do now, you know, we can wait on. Well, that, he wants it done now.
So John, that is why
Although,
that those funds are where they are.
Yeah,
That they're available. John and I had a meeting with a potential, opportunity on that.
Yeah.
In May or November.
okay,
So we're on it, but we need, you know,
Yeah.
the board, if you want to involve that.
yeah, call me. I mean, I thought, yeah, call me.
Okay.
All right, great to see you.
Thanks,
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks, guys.
No. Good conversation. No.
So my friend Juliana Ford, who Paula and I had talked about, wanted to come today, but she is under the weather.
Oh.
But I'll let Paula know too,
Okay.
that she wanted to come. But,
Well, they reported this, I guess, so
great, yeah,
I'm not
Great.
gonna. worry much about it.
awesome.
Okay, so how's everything else? Yeah,
Real good, yeah.
when are you going to Belize?
We're going at the end of March. Yeah, yeah. You
So,
ever been?
no,
Oh, okay.
but, one of my wife's,
Is this yours?
no.
Can I carry something out for you or?
I think I have it before.
So no, this
Don't
is,
have my
this
block.
is the,
This is theirs.
okay.
There's my phone. One of Bill's, colleagues. Oh, this is my phone.
Oh, here, let me help.
Everything that was going on, tourism, mountain biking. But we do a lot of fishing trips.
Oh, you do?
So, yeah, I've tried. We used to have. We got a lot